Good evening, America. Sports Reports as ordered is back. Mike Wilson and Raph Rutley. We're going to talk to you tonight. We're going to talk about what is Florida State doing. Usually when you try to rob somebody, you wear a mask and run up on them. But Florida State just announced to the world that they're going to rob the ACC. We're going to talk about some NFL free agency, play a little game, of free agency and GM. Then we're going to talk about Dame Lilliard, the 71 points the other night. How about that? Was it impressive? Was it not impressive? Raph wants to know why these old heads won't give the new school some props. Then we're going to talk about baseball. Baseball, it's that time. Spring training is here. We got some new rules. We're going to talk about baseball and get into that. And then we're going to get something off our chest as we always do. We'll get you later with our Instagrams, Twitters, and all that, and it will be in your descriptions. But first and foremost, Raph, what's going on?
Hey man, I'm just excited. Like I said, we're back on a normal schedule. Like I said, I was calling out the wrong episode number last week, but we're back on track. So our normal Tuesday, Friday. Like I said, we have all this stuff. I listen to all the pundits. I watch the games. I watch them on the iPad. I watch them on the phone. Me and you talk about it, and I was like, man, every single time I hear somebody talk about sports, I'm just like, do they care about sports, or are they just happy to be on TV? So it's going to be a lot of that. I know it's going to come off as me just being, antagonistic to some of these pundits. But when you sit here and you sit with us and we chop it up, it's like, okay, this is an easy subject to have a vast conversation about, a very in-depth conversation about, because you have so much information. And it just feels like they just fold the same information in and just spew it out from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then the game start, and then it's some nonsense after the game. Like it's boiling me over. So I'm just like, come on, do better.
Yes.
So
yes, I love it.
Yeah. So yeah. So your boys down in Tallahassee.
Down in Tallahassee, yeah. So as you can see, representing the set, what I'm saying? Get that dude up in there, see, repping the set. But I don't know what Florida State doing. I don't know, because I was looking at this, and of course, I'm not necessarily against conference realignment. I just want it to make sense. I want the rivalries to stay intact and everything. But Florida State said that they're bringing in 15% of the ACC's TV revenue, and they're only making 7% off of that. So, obviously with that being said, if you owe me my money, you're going to have to pay me my money. But Florida State signed a deal that said that they ain't getting that money. So, Raph, you tell me, what is on the Seminoles' mind?
Why would you sign a 20-year deal? Unless you Bobby Bonilla or the deferred money. But if every year you're generating more money, the conversation around college football, it's been money. It's been money for so long. It's probably been a bigger conversation about money than anything else. At least money's up there too. Talent, maybe coaches, highlighting coaches, rivalries, money. All of that's pretty much interchangeable. But the money's mixed in every time. That's probably the biggest. I remember watching the bowl games probably like 10 or 12 years ago, and ESPN was putting out like the perk packages that the players were getting for playing in certain bowls. I mean, like, there weren't even big bowl games. It'd be like the Michelin, Goodyear Tire Bowl, whatever the case may be. But they'd have each player would get like $500 gift card to Best Buy. They would get swag for the school. They get all the gear and the sweatsuits and the sweatshirts and the hoodies, and they would get like an iPad or an iPhone, things like that. So I'm like, they're getting all these perk packages, and then you'd find out that the school, I remember for those BCS bowl games, were getting like $17 million, $20 million. So the conversation around college football and money has always been there. So when they signed their deal, like, why would you sign a 20-year deal? Because their deal right now goes to 2036. I'm not sure when everyone else signed their deals, but if you're going to sign a deal in an ever-growing there's more channels. The Ocho, remember that movie Dodgeball? And they were like, I was on ESPN, ESPN 8, the Ocho. They actually like there's an actual ESPN 8 that's out there. I think they might even call it the Ocho. You wouldn't think that back in like 2003 or 4, whenever that movie came out. But because sports is 24/7, I mean, literally, you and I talk about it for 5 hours a week. On top of the fact you got full-time jobs, kids, retirement, everything else, and we still find time for 5 hours to talk about this. So sports is everywhere. So for them to make that kind of deal and then be mad about it 6 or 7 years later, when the like I said, the price of the brick went up, it's like, cool, but you still working at this price. So the only leverage they really have is taking their ball and going to the SEC, or taking their ball and just going independent, whatever the case may be. So if that's what they want to do, more power to them, because the networks are going to benefit. So if you're a school and you're driving the money up, you got to benefit. But once again, you got to use your leverage properly. So if you use your leverage properly, or get other schools involved, say, hey, we'll take this package of 4 teams. We'll take Clemson, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and UVA, and we're going to go to the Big Ten. If that's your narrative, that's your leverage. So long as Florida State use their leverage properly, the networks are going to get you the money. They might not want to give you $1.1 billion, but we've already seen that the Big Ten got $1.1 billion. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility for that number to be bestowed upon, some college football teams. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of realignment, but if you're going to do it right.
Well, it's crazy because, Mike Alford, the FSU AD, was talking to some boosters, some administration, and I think he was just laying out some stuff, and I don't know if it was supposed to get out or not, but obviously it did until the next day. Yeah, until the next day when Graham Neff, over at Clemson, came out and kind of started echoing that same thing. And then I said, oh, man, Florida State and Clemson are about to hold this conference hostage. So then I started to think about it, because basketball, I love basketball, but obviously basketball does not drive this bus. Because if it did, we might be hearing a little bit from Duke. We might be hearing a little bit from Syracuse, so on and so forth. But, now with this going on, from rumors that I have read throughout the years, I've heard Clemson and Florida State to the SEC. I've heard the Big Ten might want Miami or North Carolina, and I know as much as I hate North Carolina and Duke, they better not touch that rivalry. But, but as we look at this, it would cost Florida State $120 million to pay. That would be the exit fee to leave the ACC. But there's one problem, Raph. There's one problem. With that deal, that 20-year deal that you're talking about that they signed, they gave up their TV rights. So, so if they pay that $120 million and end up in another conference, that other conference doesn't even benefit from their home game revenue. So when we all put the money together, and this is just me trying to put something together here, I think we're looking closer to 400 and possibly even 500 million that they're leaving on the table, because if they can't get their TV rights or whatever the case may be, the ACC is going to have that for another 13 years. They're not just they're not just paying 120 million.
That's the whole key. The key is to leave, because if you're just going to pay the 120 and leave and not get the money on the back end, you're better off just staying and trying to renegotiate, because if the money, like I said, money talks, bullshit walks, is what they say. So if Florida State can really sit down, renegotiate, and get the money right, maybe start winning more games, maybe compete for a national championship between Clemson, because Clemson was the creme of the creme for a while through the Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson era, a little bit in the alphabet kid, I can't only say his name, Ungalele.
Ungalele.
Ungalele. So, you still have, you got your guy down there, the coach making $11.5 million. So if you can get into the national championship run every year, now, especially with expanding to 12, I think you have an opportunity if you can hover around, if you can stay between 7 and 10 for consecutive years, give yourself a shot, maybe pull off an upset here or there, then you can renegotiate in a couple of years. Right now, I don't know if they have enough leverage other than we're leaving. But if you're going to tell me you're leaving, you're going to give me $120 million, and then I still have the rights to make money off of you, like the main thing that you're arguing gives you leverage, you're just going to give me $120 million and leave that leverage behind, because the argument is we generate 15% of viewership, but we only get paid 7. Well, if you're going to pay me and still generate the viewership, then I'm in no hurry to alter it. But if you stay and we can build and we can work from a network to school, network to conference standpoint, then I think that's what you have. But I'm not sure if they have the leverage to force their way out.
They don't. And the ACC has a couple of problems. It doesn't just have a Florida State Clemson problem. It has a Notre Dame problem because Notre Dame plays 5 ACC games a year, but they're not a member of the conference in football. You know, they play basketball and their other sports are in the ACC, but not football. Because if Notre Dame football came to the ACC, that's the game changer. You know, Notre Dame's the big money. They're the Yankees of this. And that's why the Big Ten is holding out right now, because they're hoping that Notre Dame comes along one day. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2, and this is eerily similar to what the Big East went through, because Notre Dame was an affiliate member with them. But also the Big East, as we know and still today, is all about basketball. Your Providences, Seton Hall, St. John, so on and so forth. Right. The ACC at one point, North Carolina, Duke, Tobacco Road. The ACC was built upon basketball. Florida State's only been a member for 31 years now. And then I heard something today that just kind of blew my mind, because even as a Florida State fan that I knew that Florida State came into the ACC pretty dominant, I didn't realize that out of the last 33 ACC football championships, Florida State or Clemson has at least shared 24 of them. You know, so not only is there a viewership issue, there's hey, these teams are also running the conference. And then good old my little buddy Miami, you know, the All Canes Conference, and they haven't won the ACC yet. But I imagine that Miami is a brand like that. And then when you start talking about this revenue sharing, you start reading the writing on the wall, because I looked at the Pac-12 and there was a point where USC was getting all the revenue. You know, there was one year where they received $22 million and other schools were getting $14 million, you know, but that still wasn't good enough, because when the Pac-12 came, they made it more equal, you know, so UCLA and UCLA were getting $2 million more than everybody else. But the moment the Big Ten called, USC got up out of there. Texas and Oklahoma, they said, hey, Big 12, you're nothing without us. We're everything. And then what happened? The Big 12 acquiesced, and they said, hey, you know what, Texas and Oklahoma, you're right, but we don't want you to leave us, so we're willing to do this. And then what did Texas and Oklahoma do? They walked right on that door. So obviously, without me having any legal expertise, you know, I'm wondering if Florida State and Clemson, UNC, Miami, I wonder if they have some kind of thought that maybe that contract, that grant of rights, isn't as ironclad as it seems.
I mean, I imagine that it isn't. Like any top-notch finance lawyer, whoever generated the deal, I'm pretty sure a good team of lawyers can figure a way out of the deal. And ultimately, can you pay enough to satisfy the fact that this paragraph says one thing and you're willing to waive it for X amount of dollars? It's a matter of like, who's going to sit down and have that conversation? What's the number? And what else can you realign? Because I know the SEC is viewed as like this ironclad and you want to be top notch. But once they expand to 12 teams in the playoffs, I can see some of these SEC teams getting pulled away and joining the ACC if the ACC can get their contract and money right. Because if you think about it, South Carolina is getting beat every year in the SEC. Florida has been, you know, they've always had talent, but they have up and down years. Maybe you can slide Kentucky and Vanderbilt, and now you have Kentucky, Vanderbilt, UVA, Virginia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, Miami. You have enough names of these blue blood kind of schools, these blue chips kind of schools, and they negotiate the deal, because all this conference realignment, some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of it because I do like the rivalry games, and it's obvious that it's not a competitive reason that people are moving. People aren't moving because they want better competition. People are just moving because they just want more of the cut of the money. I can understand that piece, but in the same sense, it's like, well, don't be afraid to make the next bold move. And like, listen, we're going to pluck off a couple of these SEC schools. Georgia, I'm pretty sure they don't mind beating Alabama, but if they have a couple of years where it's back to how it was a few years ago, where it's close and then Alabama pulls it out and they end up winning by 10 or 13 points, or they're losing in the SEC championship game and it's ruining their opportunity. I can see them shifting, saying, okay, we'll join this new ACC, and that way 12 teams, we can be 1, 2, 3, or 4, and we don't have to go through Alabama. And Alabama, like, cool, we'll keep dominating from here to Texas. And then Georgia, you guys can have that section, and they can meet as an ACC champ and an SEC champ in the national championship game, because people are still going to want to put on TV because of the marquee names. But I can see that working out, because if I'm Mississippi State, it's like, man, do I really want to keep playing these guys every single year? Is there somewhere can Ole Miss, can Big Ten pull Ole Miss out of SEC if the money's the same? Because right now, the SEC's got $811 million from ESPN and the ABC. The Big Ten got $1.1 billion. So can I make that call down the lane, Kiffin and the boys, say, hey man, y'all want to join the Big Ten?
Well, to quote the great Ted DiBiase, everybody's got a price, and so what I know is, South Carolina has had a bad, tumultuous history with the ACC that culminated with them leaving the ACC at one point. Kentucky, I know, is the basketball central of the universe. So, I think they like being the big dog in the little pond. So I think a merger is definitely in the, not necessarily in the works, but I think a merger could be coming, because if you end up with a 24-team conference, as people have talked about, you can't have divisions. You're probably going to have some kind of quads or some kind of pods or whatever. So from that standpoint, yeah, you could have your South Carolina and Kentucky matched up with your North Carolina, NC State, or whatever the case.
$2.5 billion deal for 24 teams, right? Like, I imagine.
It would be more than that, I would think.
It have to be like 2.5 to 3 billion, because right now 12 teams in 1.1. So if you go to 24, you got to. Someone's got to sell out $2 billion.
Right. Yeah. Well, the Big Ten, is at they're at $7 billion right now for their new TV deal that's going to be starting, soon. So this is going to get astronomical if we go down that route. But something else that I've also heard was a potential merger between the ACC and the Pac-12, some of the Pac-12 schools. Like, there was this talk of this Atlantic Pacific Conference, just from the standpoint, what? Ridiculous. This is a thing.
It's just to think that the way the country and football were divided up 10 years ago, to think that Rutgers is in the Big Ten, USC is in the Big Ten, and then you're going to have UVA and Colorado in the same conference and call it the Atlantic Pac-12 merger.
The Atlantic Pacific Conference.
Conference, like, come on, like the trans.
Well, the way that I heard it laid out, was that there would be a mostly, obviously ACC playing ACC and Pac-12 playing Pac-12, and then they would just have a championship game between their champions, but the Big 12 is also out there. And as I mentioned before, Florida State and Clemson had some flirtations with the Big 12 at one point. So if the Big 12, is trying to make a move, that could be something that they look at. They just brought UCF in, they still have West Virginia and Cincinnati that are kind of on that island, amongst themselves, and everybody else is west of the Mississippi. So, or west of the Ohio. So, from there, there's a lot of options here, but you mentioned independence. I don't think that's an option. I don't think, this isn't 1980 anymore. So, there's only a few teams that could pull that off. Like, obviously, Notre Dame is doing it. Maybe Texas could do it. Maybe USC could do it. But I think that it gets real slim after that. I'm not even sure, Alabama could do it if, the rest of the SEC schools just bonded and said we're not going to play them if they were to go independent. So there's not a lot of schools that would probably survive, that route. So I think we're just where we are. I think that within the next 4 years, I think we're going to get some kind of announcement about Florida State and Clemson, but I don't think that they're going to be the leaders per se. I think behind closed doors, there's going to be a North Carolina or a Miami that's talking to somebody else that we're not necessarily hearing about, in the same way that we're hearing about Florida State, Clemson, because if enough teams get together, I'm sure they can toss that grant of rights in the trash.
Yeah, like I said, it just seems like a lot of money, a lot of movement. Florida State might be in a bad spot because their deal just runs so long.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real incentive for the TV contracts to be renegotiated because they probably have ironclad buyout clauses that are just, you're not gonna be able to get you're not gonna be able to negotiate a new deal. They probably have some stipulation where they get to match the deal if it's, whatever, all kinds of just verbiage just kind of written into these contracts. And I think they just pulled a bad move by signing a 20-year deal. I think they probably would have been better off signing maybe a 10-year deal with a 5-year option. And I don't know.
That's why I said
that, but I think
that's why I said 4 years. Well, that's why I said 4 years, because the Big Ten just did their $7 million deal. That goes through 2031. The SEC deal runs out at the end of this year. So you get into that 2027, 2028 timeframe, and the Big Ten seems to be a forward-thinking conference. So they're going to be looking forward to the next deal, by that time. And then we'll see what the SEC does. But somebody's talking to somebody because like Mike Alford isn't, I don't think at least, is just going to go out there talking this kind of stuff without having something in his back pocket, or at least thinking that he has something in his back pocket.
Somebody's in his DM saying, "Hey man, I'm with you. If you get the train going, we'll put some coal in it to keep it moving." Because the Pac-12, they have a 12-year deal, $3 billion contract with Fox and ESPN. Each school gets $21 million. That ends next summer. That's probably
right.
Movement. So their deal ends summer 2024. So they're gonna.
But see, that's where that merger comes in. That's where that merger comes in.
They're gonna pay $3 billion for Utah, Colorado, Oregon State, Oregon, without USC and UCLA. But you got to do something, because you can't lose it entirely, because it looks like we talked about this before. Of all the conferences, the Pac-12 is unfortunately the position where they're going to be, of the Power 5, they're going to be the ones left out, and it's going to be a Power 4 grid system where it's going to be the Big Ten's going to have the Northwest, and then you're going to have the Northeast, Southeast, and then the Southwest. It's going to, like the Big 12, it's just going to just be consumed, because the Pac-12 without USC and UCLA, I don't know, if I'm an executive, I'm like, what am I paying for? What team left moves the needle? Is Dion enough? Utah's been to the Rose Bowl 2 years in a row. Are they enough? Are they big enough? Like, I know their stadium's not, the stadium only fits like 45,000 people. It's a big deal in Utah, but it's not. Are they big enough for that region? Do you bring in Boise State? Is Boise State big enough to replace the USC, UCLA? Do you pump up Oregon more? Like, who do you move? Well, I think Florida State.
I mean, Oregon and Washington are the answers.
They'd have more leverage, because they would be the big dogs left after the two prominent schools leave. Like, for instance, if Duke and North Carolina left ACC right now, Florida State can still stand on the fact that they bring in the viewership for football. Like, they can own that piece. Whereas the Pac-12 is like, none of you drive the needle, so we're probably going to save some money on this next deal, and we're going to go $1.5 billion. I know you guys were used to the 3, but none of you drive the needle enough to where we have to give up that.
Well, the ACC has, an abnormal number of private schools as well. They have 6 total, which includes your Boston colleges and Wake Forests that don't move any needles. But where the ACC has an advantage, to your point, over the Pac-12 is, I like to use this phrase, so just bear with me. The Pac-12 is landlocked, because as you mentioned, like San Diego State is there, but what's your other options? Wyoming, New Mexico, nobody wants that. But in the ACC, you could go, I'm not saying that this is a great thing, and I'm not saying that they should want to do this, but you could go grab a Memphis that comes with some FedEx money. You can go grab USF down in Tampa that comes with a big city in Florida, whatever the case may be. So you won't necessarily replace a Florida State or Clemson, but you have options.
Games at noon on Saturday, because we love football. I don't know if people watching football games at 9 a.m. West Coast football games. And I don't know if the West Coast fans are filling that stadium at 9 a.m. So it's not fair to the fans that live out there. So I don't know how you can put it on TV. Maybe you get the middle of the day slots, but 4 p.m. on the West is 7 p.m. out here. That's the Alabama, Oregon neutral site game that's played in Dallas. Like, we're talking about that for 2 hours before that comes on at 8 o'clock. So the San Diego State versus Colorado game isn't going to get ESPN's prime spot or ABC's prime spot over the Alabama-Florida game. Like, Alabama played like 3 or 4 o'clock. Like, you would think that's not a good time, but like, they basically have that slot almost every week on CBS. Like you said, the Pac-12 being landlocked, it gives Florida State some leverage, because like, whereas teams in the Pac-12 don't have that, Florida State can go Big Ten, they can go Big 12, they can go SEC, or they can stay ACC, because just the way that the entire region is already kind of divided up.
See, Florida State and Clemson leaving is pretty much a death blow, you know, because I mean, from that standpoint, you got Miami, you know, as far as like big brand, big market, you know, if we consider Virginia Tech to be a, you know, market, but if Florida State and Clemson are out of there, Carolina's out of there probably, you know, because they're that next big brand. Even though it's because of their basketball, they're probably that next big brand.
But you still have an opportunity because of the region you're in to leave. I know this is far-fetched, but I never would have thought USC would have left the PAC conference, whatever, 10 or 12 or 8, whatever it was when they were in there. You can maybe negotiate and get a Florida out of there. You can get Florida out of SEC. Maybe you get...
Not with that money.
You once again, you would have to... The pendulum would swing back to now the networks having to be a little bit more desperate and throw money at these teams to replace them. Like, if Florida State and Clemson leave, you're going to have to do something to pull. So maybe you try to pull, you lose 2 teams from South Carolina and Florida, and you pull 2 other ones. Because if
all this happens,
if you can make the South Carolina and Florida move, if you lose Florida State and Clemson, then you're right back where you were, and you're not, your viewership's probably is going to be the same. You're not losing out. Whereas USC leaving the Pac-12 and you trying to replace USC and UCLA with San Diego State, you're way behind the 8 ball. I mean,
hey, if Florida State and Clemson leave, then Duke, Wake Forest, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Virginia, and Virginia Tech better become juggernauts in basketball, because football's over. You know what I mean? If that happens, and that's the thing, because
I think you'd be able to make that move. I think you'd be able to pull Florida and South Carolina, because that would be your top priority. As soon as Florida State and Clemson left, I'm throwing money at Florida and South Carolina.
See, that's what I'm saying. See, you the 2-5 right now. You the 2-5 right now, because like I said, like right now, because I mean, going off of what Mike Alford said, what Mike Alford told the boosters and the admin.
Yeah.
Right now, today, they're making $30 million less than the SEC and the Big Ten. So how do you make that up once they leave? How do you make that up to entice one of those schools to come to the ACC?
You gotta go 40 million over. You gotta get it to 40 million. Because you're more at risk of losing 2 to 3 more teams. You let Florida State and Clemson walk without immediately replacing them. It's like letting your free agent leave, and because you didn't want to pay him, and then not using that money to get someone that caliber. Just be like, you know what, we're going to stand pat. Like, no, you might have to swallow your pride and throw $42 million per team at the new team, or just renegotiate with your current team, because if they leave, that's your viewership. So at some point you're gonna have to be like, you know what's the number we need to make everybody as happy as possible? Because like, what's the phrase I was talking about earlier? Like the you made a good deal when everybody
walks away feeling that yeah.
So if you feel like you got over, then you didn't make a good deal, and it's gonna hurt you in the end. Like if you think Florida State giving you money and then you get in their name for a few years is gonna work out. Well, what happens next summer when the Pac-12 is like, hey, our deal is up. Hey, Duke, North Carolina, you want to be part of the Super Pac-12? All right.
Well, we're going to end this one with a joke. With the light of this news with Florida State and Clemson potentially leaving the ACC better get SMU on the phone before the Pac-12 finishes that deal.
This Pac-12 having their deal in 2024, man, that's huge. They have a little bit more desperation. They can't just the fact they got 13 more years in their deal. So desperation.
Yeah. So when it comes to money, do you think people will be surprised that I wouldn't let Daniel Jones walk?
Daniel Jones, like I said, I believe I brought this up last week. He left his old agency, went to a new one, and his new agent leaked his old agency leaked the $45 million a year to try to make him look bad. I don't think it makes him look bad because that's the number. Like that is the number that Herbert, Burrow, Lamar, Deshaun, that's the number most of these guys are going to be floating around anyway. I mean, we know that's the franchise tag number. So quarterbacks that get franchise tag this year, if they do it to Dimes or Lamar Jackson, it's $45 million. So that means if you don't do the deal this year, if you make the deal next year, more likely it's going to be 4 or 5 years. It's going to be at least that $45 million, if not closer to 48. I mean, can you imagine 50 million? I don't know what the cap situation is. Like I said, me and you talk about the cap all the time, and we talk about how much cap room a team has and dead money cap. I'm like, listen, if I get an internship with the Eagles and they can teach me about this cap and I can understand it, because when I read about it, it still doesn't make any sense. Like, for instance, I was watching something earlier, and they're talking about the players that are being released. So they're announcing that these guys are going to get released on March 15th. And by announcing that they're going to get released on March 15th, which is the beginning of the NFL year, then the money can go to this year's cap and not the next year's cap. And the guy was like, it's a real complicated system. And that's all he said. I'm like, this guy is like, that's what he does. Like, that's what he does.
Hey, look at Washington. Washington just got $26 million for letting Wentz go.
But it's like, is it a dead cap hit? It's not a hit. Like, what does that mean? The Atlanta had a $34 million like cap hit for trading Matt Ryan. It's like, what does that mean? Does that mean you couldn't use $34 million of your cap? So how do you have cap room now? Like, it just like the whole thing is chaotic. But ultimately, what we do know about the franchise tag and the price of quarterbacks, a lot of other positions tend to be a little bit more flexible. I know, like Devontae Adams got $30 or $28 million, and then Tyreek got $30 million. And I'm pretty sure other wide receivers aren't out there like, oh, I want $31 million. You know, some of these guys are like, yeah, I'll take 24.5. I'll take 22. I know they want to get close, but those numbers are a little hard because you can replace the wide receiver essentially.
Right.
You want to say you can replace Daniel Dimes or Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, but can you and still be a viable team? Because without a good quarterback, I mean, these coaches lose their job. We saw it happen to Steve Wilkes when they drafted Josh Rosen. It didn't work out. They got rid of both of them. You know, you saw it with Nathaniel Hackett. They got Russ. Russ wasn't playing well. He lost the coach. And then now Denver has to pay $17 or $20 million for Sean Payton. So I personally, I wouldn't give him 45 million unless I'm willing to give a quarterback $1 million a passing touchdown. If you can consistently throw me 32, 33, 35 touchdowns, and then your occasional bootleg, quarterback sneak, whatever the case may be, get you 2 or 3 more, like the Jalen Hurts. Because Daniel Jones did have 7, I think he had 7 rushing touchdowns. But even that, he only gave you 22 total touchdowns. I still think, based off this year and the quarterback play, I still think he was top 10. But if you want 30 or 40, 45 million, I need a touchdown pass per million consistently.
So I think that if I were the Giants GM, I would play the little inch back and forth game. Like, I'm like, all right, Danny, like,
where do you start? You're the GM. Like,
I think I started.
If you're the GM, so Danny Dimes, rumored has he's coming in at 45 million. What are you countering with off the bat?
So it's tough because I'm gonna take a bad leap. I'm going back. Danny Dimes gonna be mad at me, and he might want to get out my office. But I think I'm willing to start at 38.
38.
Yeah. Right. So we'd be $7 million off.
So we looked at 38. We pulled up top QB salaries right now. Top quarterback salaries. Okay, boom. Hopefully we get a nice little easy list. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, according to NFL.com, we got 50 million. What date is this? That's for the 20. So this is for the 2022 season. Aaron Rodgers got 50. Russell Wilson 49. Kyler Murray 46. Deshaun Watson 46. Mahomes 45. Allen 43. Carr 40. Dakota 40. Stafford 40. Kirk Cousins 35. So that puts him 9th. That puts him 10th.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. You think he top 10? I'm giving him top 10 money. There you go. So I would start out at 38. We would probably, I think that if I had a cutoff, if he wasn't willing to come below, say, 42, like if he was like, hey, 43 million and that's it, or, whatever. That's how the conversation goes. 43 million or I'm out of here. Then I say, you know what, sir? I will come back with you and I will help you pack your bags.
Yeah. I think ultimately it's just he's in such a win-win situation.
Well, for me, I think Daniel Jones is just he's still an enigma to me. He had this great year, and I would actually like to see him with the money to see how he plays with the pressure of having the money. I just wouldn't want to be the one to pay him the money.
The issue is that normally when you have a young quarterback that's not getting paid, and this is the issue that the Ravens have and the Giants have, you have a pass catcher that's already under nice size contract. That's your young quarterback's favorite target. The Ravens don't have that that they got outside the numbers that your young quarterback can just throw the ball up to.
Right.
Arizona had it with D-Hop. Early on, Matt Ryan had it with Julio. Even when Aaron Rodgers was like creeping up with the money, he still had Devontae Adams. So Joe Burrow has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So they have these guys they can throw it to that aren't getting paid yet. Danny Dimes, if he gets $45 million, I don't know how many free agent wide receivers on the market that you can get that are going to be an ultimate 1-2 combo to make that $40 million stretch. Because you're throwing to Darius, good wide receiver, Galladay, they're cutting. We're going to talk about him in a second. Saquon, I don't know if you can maybe franchise him. Maybe he does play or he doesn't play. But even then, he's a running back. You can put you could put three extra guys in the box that can limit a running back. It's so much you do stop wide receiver, a top flight wide receiver.
So real quick, unless you're going to get Odell Beckham to come back to New York, because I know that was a conversation at one point last year. So I'm just looking at this list that I pulled up. I'm not going to go through all the papers, but I got all the free agents right here. So, just first glance, I got Jacoby Myers. I got from the Patriots. I got Paris Campbell from the Colts. Robert Woods, who had a bad year in Tennessee, coming off that injury, but he's probably not that type of receiver. You got Juju and Nicole, who are better than the receivers he has right now, but I don't know if that's the answer either. So, you know what I mean? Just off of first glance there. And they got your boy, you said you couldn't say Uwe Angalele. I can't say your receiver's name. Zacchaeus or,
Olamide Zacchaeus?
Yeah, there you go. Him. You know what I mean? And you got Juice Landry. You got Juice Landry out there.
Yeah. So,
unless Michael Thomas becomes available.
Unless you can either get T. Higgins from Cincinnati or you have a line on a definitive George Pickens kind of 6'5" rookie wide receiver that can help Kenny Pickett out like the way that they have that set up. If you don't have that, then do you just let Dimes walk and then you go get Derek Carr and pay Derek Carr $27 to $32 million? And he's a little bit more proven, and then you can still get D-Hop or somebody else. Because I don't know.
Maybe in that scenario, you can keep Saquon.
Because I can't pay. I wouldn't pay Daniel Jones. What we got? I wouldn't pay him. I wouldn't pay him $30 million. I don't like.
Wow.
I think he's a top 10 performer. The problem is he performed at a level that matched his contract. If you give him a third of your, 20%, 25% of your salary cap, then is he's going to have to jump from what I perceive as argumented top 10. You gave him the 12. He's got to go to 5 because every week it's going to be you're giving this guy $45 million a year and he went 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and 230 yards passing. So it's in that New York media, it's going to be scrutinized. I think Dallas is still going to be good. Philly's still going to be good. The Giants are going to be solid, and then Washington is going to be whatever Washington ends up being.
Well, I was going to ask you.
You're going into the season third with the third best quarterback, and you're paying him the most money, and then he's going to play like the third best quarterback as well because I think Prescott and Hurts are better than him. Mm-hmm. So it's just you're just in a tough spot.
Well, I was going to ask you, playing the GM. If you're the GM, is Zeke a Cowboy next year?
No. Whatever hit you take on the cap, you take it and you go and let him walk. Because you can't pay him. Yeah, he had like 12 touchdowns, but Pollard got you to the 6.
Pollard's coming off that injury too.
Yes, and I don't want to diminish the running back role, but you know what you're going to get with Zeke. So he played a full year, he's healthy. It's not like he got markedly better as the year went on. It wasn't like, back, he's playing all these games, he's filling his stride, he's getting his 16 to 20 touches a game, and he's giving you 7-8 yards or six or so yards a touch. Pollard was giving you 5 or 6 yards a rush and 7-8 yards a touch with the screen pass.
That Minnesota game? Woo.
Just getting him in space one-on-one with a linebacker. I'm not sure if you throw Zeke those routes. I'm not sure if you float Zeke backfield to get him routes. So
one more question before we get to Galladay and all that. If you're Kansas City, what you doing with Juju? Is he worth coming back?
If he can come back, if I can't get Odell Beckham Jr., I know everyone talked about him all year long, but I think he sat out a whole year, and if he's fully healthy, I think the routes that Andy Reid and I believe they promoted Matt Nagy to OC.
Mm-hmm.
I think that combination, I think they can get Odell Beckham open anywhere in the field, especially because they say he wasn't a great route runner, but he was always open.
So right. If they can't get Odell Beckham, I would like to see them get either, and I'm not big fans of either one of these dudes. I'm just thinking about speed. I would like to see them get either Darius Slayton or Lazard from Green Bay. But anyway, back on point. You know what you got?
Yeah, so I would say Juju, if he's willing to take 2 years, $13.5 million, something, just something just to, hey, you got a ring, you can stay here, catch some more passes, get another ring. But Kansas City has like 12 picks in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have the second most picks because they got 4 or 5 for Tyreek. So you call Arizona and say, hey, we'll give you a second and a fourth for Hopkins. I know at first I said I wasn't really on board with it, but I'm thinking about it. It's like, if you don't jump at that chance as Hopkins, like, so I'm going from Kyler Murray, who's injured, new head coach who looks like a science teacher, to an offensive genius and Andy Reid with Kelsey getting double teamed, and then it's me one-on-one on the outside, and I got Mahomes throwing me the best back shoulder fades in the field, and I can just muscle people up. Oh yeah, D-Hop goes there, he catches 11 touchdowns next year because he's gonna be a red zone target.
All right, so we both said that we're not wanting to pay Danny Dimes that type of money.
Can't pay it.
All right, so who we got next?
All right, we got Leonard Fournette. Is he playing on an NFL team next year, and who?
That is a good question, and I think that I always joke around LSU backs because they're always hurt. You know what I mean? I think somebody kicks his tires, brings him to training camp, and see how it goes.
I know he came into camp, and I don't know. Rumor has he came into camp at like 260 last year.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what his contract is looking like.
So he just got cut today, and so I don't know. That's a tough one because like he would have to go to a team that I would imagine he would want to go to a contender, where he is in his career.
Beggars can't be choosers. Anybody can be a contender if you get enough players. Like you can.
Yeah, anybody could be a contender.
You could say them go to the Chargers because they look like contenders and they end up third in the division. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could work. The Chargers would actually not be a bad choice, but you could be anybody could be a contender if they get Josh Jacobs.
Buffalo needs to be on the phone with anybody who runs the ball, and then that player needs to show up to Buffalo with his 15 favorite running plays and add them to the Buffalo playbook because they do not exist. I guarantee you that Josh Jacobs' favorite 15 runs he was getting in Oakland are not Buffalo playbook. So bring that section of the notepad. I don't know how much they make you give up or what if you can commit the memory and say, hey man, I like these 15 plays and none of them Josh Allen running the ball. Give me the ball these plays throughout the game.
So
maybe Derek
Fournette. So for
maybe leaving Tennessee.
Maybe. Well, I was going to say for Fournette. I was just trying to think of a team while you were saying that, and so I came up with a team. I don't think it's a real thing, but I'm just thinking of teams that could need a running back. I was looking at Miami because both Mostert and Jeff Wilson are free agents, so they might not re-sign both of them. So
I think they like the speed. I think Miami's identity is we are going to beat you with scheme and speed and not necessarily power. I think, honestly, if you want to stay in division, go to Atlanta. Atlanta has Algier, who's a big power back, Cordero Patterson, Fournette, I think he would get a lot of touches in that run offense. They have a young quarterback. The playbook is very simple. It's very run heavy. I think Atlanta led the league in rushing last year.
What about
tips per game?
What about Chicago? Because Montgomery's a free agent.
Well, Chicago just doesn't really make wise football decisions, so I can't. Looking, he has to go. He has to go to a dome or warm
Saints.
team.
Saints. Ingram's a free agent.
He's from Louisiana. I'm gonna just say it's Saints. I'm gonna say that's where he ends up.
Yeah, because Mark Ingram is a free agent.
Mark Ingram's a free agent. He's from there. It's down south.
Kamara might go to jail.
Kamara might go to jail. At least he's on the commander or the commissioner's exempt list. So you have eight or nine dome games, home dome games. You play one dome in Atlanta. You play another game in Tampa, and then you play another game. And so 12 of your 17 games can be in warm weather.
Right.
So, and you're older back, you're from New Orleans. I'm like, I would just say, just go ahead and call the Saints up. I'm like, I'll play for $2-3 million.
So what about that thing I sent you earlier saying that Cincinnati should maybe think about cutting Joe Mixon?
I don't know where that came from, unless someone has inside information that he wants like a big deal because of the back-to-back deep playoff runs. I think that talent, you don't just find it anywhere. I don't think you can just put any back in there and make it fit, because if that was the case, every back you had in your team would have similar numbers.
So I don't think they should, because I like him. But looking at their free agent list, they do Hayden Hurst is a free agent. Jesse Bates is a free agent. Von Bell is a free agent, and Trey Flowers is a free agent. So I could probably prioritize those guys, a lot of those guys that I just named, over him. But I like Joe Mixon. I think they should keep Joe Mixon.
Hayden Hurst. I mean, I like Hayden Hurst. He was on the Falcons. I like him a lot. I think he's a talented back. Talented tight end. But I'm not sure how many routes have the tight end as the second or third option and all this that watch. I don't know how many passes he caught, but I just know that Mixon was a big part of the offense. And I don't know if I think you can replace the tight end for the running back. Even though people say you can just put any kind of running back in there, we've seen that's not the case.
Right.
I mean, they're everywhere. True.
All right. Who else you got for me?
So we got Galladay, man who robbed the Giants, no mask, just with a note. He just signed a little note, took the money.
You know what?
Washington?
Maybe. No, not at all. We got receivers already. We're good. We're good. I was going to say maybe he could be the next part of the New England rehabilitative program.
I don't know. I have it. Randy Moss. Randy Moss is the only receiver I've seen go to New England and have a career that statistically mattered after getting New England. Antonio James, Ocho Cinco. I don't have a New England highlight for Ocho Cinco.
No, he was bad there. It didn't work. Antonio Brown had one great game,
and then he got. So I don't see the appeal for wide receiver going to New England. Maybe Bill O'Brien can show him some film back when he was a coach and he was yelling with Tom Brady on the sideline, but I just don't see their offense doesn't seem to fit that. It just doesn't seem. I rarely see them go 3 and 4 wide. There's a lot of 2 tight end sets.
Pittsburgh.
I don't. Unless Tomlin says, and he quoted, he's like, I run towards coaching. I think he takes on those challenges. I just don't know if you bring him in with a second-year quarterback. I think he has to go somewhere because he's got his money, whatever checks they wrote for him and with the Giants, I think he would be one of those guys that would end up trying to get to Kansas City, trying to get to the Chargers. Maybe he tries to get
SoFi. Maybe, the Rams.
Maybe Tennessee if they keep Tannehill. Something like that. I can see he would need to go to a place with like a veteran head coach, established quarterback, or hell, go back to Detroit if they got space for him. But yeah,
they got receivers. They don't need them.
Go to a team that has any kind of quarterback trouble. He needs to go to a team where that quarterback is putting the ball on the money, and he's getting.
Should he try to slide his? Should he try to slide his way over to Aaron Rodgers? Wherever Aaron Rodgers ends up.
Wherever Aaron goes. If Aaron goes to, like I said, my source said Raiders. I think that's perfect for Aaron. First and foremost, I think Aaron in Green Bay makes the most sense because I just want to see somebody finish their career in the same jersey. Like I just want to see.
Except for Dame Lillard, huh? Except for Dame Lillard, right?
Well, Dame Lillard really likes Utah. It's a different.
Who you got next? Who you got next?
Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. Why does everyone think that makes sense?
They just want
pundits are playing like fantasy football or like real that's. Oh, you just insert Aaron Rodgers and they're a definite playoff team. I'm like, they're just doing
the Laker thing.
They're
just doing the Laker thing. They want New York to be good. That's it.
I think Zach Wilson was his throws were so bad that you felt like that game where they lost to New England off the punt return and the defense gave up like 99 yards of total offense. So some crazy low.
Yeah.
And it's like then you don't move the ball when we get it back, and then they punt it right up the gut, and the guy runs it back and you lose 10-3. And then that game where he got benched, there was a couple of throws, man. Like he missed throws to the flat, like wide open. Like that was the route. Mm-hmm. That was the read. The read was the little flat pass to like Barrios or somebody out of the backfield. He's a punt returner, kick returner. Just get the ball in his hands. Ball's landing at his feet. Guy was big route. Ball is like five in front of him on the ground. It's like, how are you missing this bad?
If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm following your source, and I'm going to the Raiders because, one, as an old man myself, you know what I mean? I want to be in the warm weather. You know what I mean?
9 games in the
You got Devontae.
Well,
you got Devontae there, and Green Bay has shown you for years when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. They've shown you for years that they don't want to invest in wide receivers. They don't want to go get you nobody. They drafted these two dudes, Watson and Dubes, who are good, but you know what I mean? Like they still don't have. Watson might be a star depending on what they do at quarterback going forward, but Aaron Rodgers hasn't had, besides Devontae Adams, they haven't shown that they're trying to get him that type of help. They got the running game, but they don't use the running backs anyway, as much as they should. So
I him in the past tense a lot. Like Brian Gutekunst was at the combine, and they asked him, and they talked about, Aaron's a big part of this. We're still trying to figure out what's going on, and we're in good communication, yada yada yada. But we really like what Jordan's doing. He's done everything that we've asked of him, stuff like that. He's saying like those kind of phrases, like those leading, like, hey, we're leading towards this guy, which makes the ultimate amount of sense. I get that. Mm-hmm. It just, once again, the GM move was like, why'd you give Aaron Rodgers this money last year? Why'd you give him?
Well, I'm sure
$50 million. We didn't have.
I'm sure if you talked to somebody in Tallahassee about 2 years ago, they told you that the ACC was doing right by them. So yeah, I take that with a grain of salt.
I mean, from now and the next 7 weeks, with the franchise tags, contract negotiations, draft positioning, trades, I wouldn't believe a single word from any of these GMs unless they are speaking off the record to a reporter at a bar somewhere and say, listen, this is off the record. Don't tell anyone I told you this, but we're not trading Justin Fields, or Aaron Rodgers is not coming back to Green Bay. No one's going to get on TV and say, oh, yeah, Aaron's out of here. Like when Shannon Sharp called Julio a couple years ago, and he was like, what's going on, man? I heard what's going on with you in Atlanta. He's like, oh, man, I'm out of there. Like, people aren't going to say that. You're going to get, like, you'll get something like if any one of these guys have, like, a celebrity girlfriend or wife with a big Instagram following, there's going to be something like, so-and-so's wife was spotted in L.A. house shopping. You'll get stuff like that.
Yeah.
Justin Fields' family was spotted in Dallas, signing jerseys at a football camp. Like, stuff like that. That kind of stuff you're going to get over the next 7 weeks. So that's why you got to take everything with a grain of salt.
All right, who else we got?
And we got Derek Carr. And I think Derek Carr, sadly, is waiting to see where Aaron Rodgers decides where he's going to go.
I think for Derek Carr, I think he's the Jet.
I think he might be Saints.
That would probably be a good fit. That would probably be a very good fit.
Same number. You have 12 potentially warm games out of 17.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. Maybe the Chargers and the Rams, but they have to play a couple of games in Seattle. They got to play a couple of games in San Francisco, or one game in San Francisco, one game in Seattle. Could be cold.
Could be rainy.
You could have that. Arizona's a dome, so you're good there. So I think playing the AFC, play those games outside against Kansas City and Denver, but just being in the South, playing those games indoors, fast team. If Kamara's there, easy check down. I've seen Kamara stand out there and just wave his hand, get the pass, and score a touchdown. Like, and like I said, it's a winnable division. You have no quarterback in Carolina, one quarterback I think they're going forward with Kyle Trask in Tampa Bay. Atlanta has Ritter, so he'd immediately be the best quarterback in division upon arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you go to the AFC East, play all those games outside in New York, play your game in Buffalo, play a game in New England, and then maybe you get one warm game down in Miami? And you could potentially still be third or fourth in that division.
Okay, I like it.
Miami's a good team, good solid foundation. They have speed on the outside, quarterback that had good chemistry. The coach seemed to know what he was doing. I'm going to NFC South. If I'm a free agent quarterback and a team in NFC South wants me, I'm going there, because whatever team gets the better quarterback can win that division.
Yeah, all you gotta do is beat Kyle Trask, right?
You gotta beat Kyle Trask and Arthur Smith, who runs the same plays every single week. The defense has like Swiss cheese.
All right, real quick, and then we gotta go. Josh Jacobs.
I think this is his first contract, so he's gonna have to go to a team that not a contender. Somebody's willing to pay him $14 million, $15 million. So I think the franchise tag for Saquon was like $12 or $13 million. So running backs aren't getting much more than that. So he would have to go to a team like who's notorious for overpaying. Who would? Like, I don't know who would.
Hey, Chicago has the most cap space. They should do it, first of all. I don't know if he wants to play in that weather, but, He
would have to go to, like, Chicago, maybe a Houston. He would have to go to one of these teams drafted in the top 5 to get the money he wants.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth it. You lead the league in rushing. You with a team that has so much controversy, so much changeover. Right. 3 head coaches in the last 2 years, made the playoffs still. Then you come back, lead the league in rushing. I think he's a viable running back, and I think he should get paid. But in order for him to get paid, he's going to have to go on his team, like drafting in the top 5 or 6.
Right. All right. So did you have another one?
No, I think we covered them all.
All right.
It's going to be interesting. I'm excited to hear.
It's definitely going to be interesting. March 15th. You know what I'm saying? I'm excited. So, Damian Lillard, 71 points. And I heard some people, I ain't going to say no names. You probably going to say some names, but I ain't going to say no names. I heard some people talking about how it was not impressive. And I just want to say, Joey Gladstone, cut it out. What you got, Raph?
Rob Parker, cut it out. Like I said, for legal reasons, I don't know if we can play his clip, but I can quote him because he said it out loud. He said it wasn't impressive because it's so easy to score in the NBA. And he had a guest host on today. I whiffed on the name. I think his name was Ted something. I forgot what his name was. I'll look it up and give him credit later. But he said it wasn't impressive because it's so easy to score in the NBA. And then he went into how awful the All-Star game was. And like I said, anyone who can articulate a point, I want to hear it. I want to listen to it because I find it very interesting. That these are conversations that get you. You can be on a 9-hour flight from Seattle to Korea, and if you're sitting next to someone having a good, genuine conversation for the first 3 or 4 hours, get you some sleep. That's a good flight. You know, somebody you really talk to, articulate their point. And I think Rob's point was he feels like the defense in today's NBA is lacking. And I get that. That's one point. But you try to tie in 2 guys being one of 8 times in the NBA that they scored 71 points. That doesn't mean that the defense was bad. That means that because people shoot. Dame shot 38 shots. He went 22 for 38. Plenty of players shoot 19 for 31, 17 for 34. Like, people shoot 30 plus shots a game. A lot of like your primary scorers, Luka shoots a lot of shots. Who else was put? Russell Westbrook used to put up a lot of shots. Kevin Durant never put up that many, but Harden used to put up a lot of shots. Kyrie, a lot of these guys put up a lot of shots. Steph puts up a lot of shots, but they don't hit 22 of 38 of them in 13 threes. That's not bad defense. A couple of his threes was from the logo, like he was on the corner of the logo. So with Donovan Mitchell, he scored a bunch of his points in the second half, just going back and forth, basically putting the team on his back. So it wasn't like people weren't defending him at the rim. He shot a lot of free throws, so that means defensively, people were there to follow him. It wasn't like the All-Star game where they were just dribble driving, laying the ball up. So he was trying to put the 2 of those things together. So I did a little bit of research, not even much, just simple research, because I'm like all these old heads always talking about how back in the day it was always tougher and yada, yada, yada.
But before you even do that, I just want to say, you know, I'm not getting into a GOAT conversation, but he's always talking about how Michael Jordan is the GOAT. And I saw so many games where Jordan will shoot like 7 for 31, but then, you know, get like 15 free throws, so he ends up with 30 points. So, I mean, you know.
And they talk about how Jordan scored with 63 points in that playoff, and Larry Bird said that was Jesus disguised as Jordan. And he praises that, but the Bulls lost that game. So it was like, was it easy to score because it was Jordan? So I was like the problem is like you can't articulate and like quantify and qualify that argument. Right. So the NBA has had 62 60-point regular season games, right? You had guys like James Harden, Luka, and to include the 70-point game, Dame, you had Kobe, LeBron had 1. Wilt Chamberlain had 32. He had 32 of the 62 60-point games in NBA history. Some of those games he lost. So is it easier to score now, or is it the fact that the guys who are scorers and they get hot, you can't do anything about it? Like if we looked at Klay Thompson's game where he scored 37 points in the third quarter, they were feeding him that ball. Steph was giving him the ball because once he got hot, I mean, I saw one play, if you check the highlights, he caught the ball at his knees and just came up, shot it, and it went in. And the announcer was like, oh my God, even that went in. Like when you're just.
Didn't he have like a 60-point game where he touched the ball for like barely over a minute?
He had 11 dribbles and he scored 60 points. So it's just sometimes you just get hot. These guys are NBA players. If you watch the pregame and you watch the interview and they have the announcers like Charles Barkley sitting courtside and you're watching the shoot around and it's like 8 or 11 basketballs being shot. I mean, 6 or 7 of these things are just going in back to back. These guys are great shooters. JaVale McGee, you can watch JaVale McGee shoot. He'll hit 10, 11, 12 threes in a row in pregame because these guys are the top professionals. They're the top 400 people in the world at what they're doing. So if you get hot, you get hot. It's not a matter of like if people were dropping 50 points every night, like i.e. Will Chamberlain averaged 50 points for a season. If someone's dropping 50 points on multiple teams every single night, okay, it's easy. But sometimes guys just get hot and teammates just feed them. And if you're feeling it, everybody's had it. Everyone's been at the court one day where it's like you were just running it. You either had the team that was rebounding and kicking the ball out, or you had, especially we played in Utah on lunch breaks. Those guys are getting the passes, they're running the lanes, and you just feeling it. You get the ball in your hand, you just let it fly. Some days it's just like that. I watched Dame a few weeks ago probably drop like 17 or 18 points. He just wasn't feeling it. But some of those shots he was putting up last night was like there's no defense for it. Hand in his face, like, listen, I'm hot. I'm putting this up.
So I got a question for you. You ever see Josh Hart score 70?
No.
Dante DiVincenzo?
No.
Kyle Lowry?
No.
What? Then it ain't easy.
It ain't easy at all. It's not. It's not easy. And the argument, because him and Chris Broussard make this argument a lot when we had these GOAT conversations, it just lacks context. I understand the point you're trying to make when you're saying that, hey, it was tougher to score in the 80s and 90s. The problem is they don't finish that statement. It was tougher to score in the paint in the 80s and 90s because you're 6'8" to 6'11" guys before Tracy McGrady and Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill and all those other guys were 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", that were scoring 18 to 20 feet from the hoop. You got your Oakleys, your Masons, your Sean Kemps, your Tom Dale Davis, all those guys were around the hoop. Your Bill Lamberts and your Rick Mahomes. So it's like they're both on each side of the paint. So yeah, it was harder to get a layup.
And you came down there and you got DDT'd or clotheslined.
You got fouled. I mean, the highlights of the fouls they're not good defense. That's another thing. Right. They always argue, oh, it's tougher. I'm like, those are fouls. And they got on Gilbert Arenas last week for a big, like, I mean, like, so I'm going all over the place, but it was tougher to score in the paint because it was your two big men down there because they didn't stretch the floor. They were down there to rebound. And then the two guys defending them. And then as your dribble driving to the hoop, your guy's there. So it's 6 of you at the rim every time because there was no space in the floor. The reason the scoring looks like it's easier now is because the NBA court is 94 by 50 feet. So if I can get if Anthony Davis can pull Embiid away from the hoop and LeBron can dribble drive to the lane and only person there is Tobias Harris or Harden helping out off of, D'Angelo Russell, then yeah, it's going to look easier. But the reason it's that easy is because if you kick the ball to Anthony Davis at 18 to 20 feet, he can dribble drive from there or he can knock that jump shot down. You're not kicking the ball to Charles Oakley at 20 feet and having him shoot that jumper. It just wasn't part of the game plan. You're not kicking that to Luke Longley and having him hit you your 17, 18-footer. Even Tim Duncan wasn't shooting that from that far out. Yao Ming stretched it a little bit, but he was an anomaly. Dirk stretched it. So Dirk was one of those original waves of guys who were 7 feet tall that could pull a 7-foot or 7-foot defender away from the hoop. So as those guys started coming in, then yeah. And then you have a guy like Giannis who's 7 foot who can dribble drive to the hoop. So it's just the different types of players on the same size court. So it looks easier. It's not easier, just strategic. It's just more space because you can spread out where you couldn't spread out before. So, and Jordan couldn't shoot. A lot of these guys couldn't shoot threes. They didn't want to shoot threes because that was considered an ineffective shot. Now it's like, oh, if you could pull up from the logo, pull up from the logo.
Yeah, and I just want to add Rasheed Wallace to that pull him out too. But
I also forget Rasheed Wallace. But yeah, he was one of those guys, and someone had to tell him, like, listen, stop begging Shaq. I watched an interview with him last week. Actually, he's like, man, Shaq can hit you with everything he had when you were down low. And then somebody had to tell him, like, listen, man, yeah, that's cool. Let him do all that on that end, and then we'll play the best team defense we can. But on offensive end, take him out to 20 feet. Make him guard you 20 feet from the hoop.
Right.
And that's how Detroit won a championship, with that, just space in the floor.
So you know what impressed me about what Damian did? So he hit the 13 threes. You know, he scored 41 points in the first half. But I think the most impressive thing to me was he did it in 39 minutes. You know, whereas Donovan Mitchell got his 70. I'm not comparing to take away from what Donovan Mitchell did, you know, but Donovan Mitchell also went to overtime. You know, so I think that was what impressed me more about Dames. And to your point, you know, like, yeah, like I'm sure that for me, it was fun watching your Patrick Ewings and your David Robinsons, who were centers who had a little bit of range or whatever the case may be, but they wasn't doing what Karl Anthony Towns is doing. And I did not just pick Karl Anthony Towns because he went to Kentucky, I promise. But you know, but he was just the first name that popped into my mind because I freestyled that. But yeah, so as I was looking back, and me and you, we briefly touched on this in a phone conversation one time, but I've always thought the toughest era as far as like the defense and all that, like straight up defense, I always thought it was like that the middle of that Kobe era when LeBron was starting to take over, you know, around that like
that early,
07.
The numbers bear that out too. I checked the
because the Celtics
at early 2000, the transition from the 90s to these 2000s players, because that's when you started getting your new crop of players. So yeah, that's probably
so
recently.
I know we make fun of the Celtics for like, you know, acting like they won 4 championships when they only won 1, but they were playing some defense. That was defense. You know what I mean? Like that team is probably equipped to play defense against some of these teams today. Not saying they would stop them, but they probably, because they had the James Posey and the Tony Allens, and Ray Allen was even playing some defense at one point. So they had the wings to, you know, I would have loved to see that Boston
6'8", you know, big, just and he had the bravado. Like you got to have a little bravado when you go out there and play defense. Like Pat Beverly,
yeah, I would
6'1", 6'2". He was like,
I would have loved
you, yeah.
If I could go into a time machine, I would love to see that Celtics team defend Jordan, you know, and give him the blues that they were giving Kobe. And I mean, Kobe still put up some numbers, but he had to work. So I would love to see Jordan against them. So like when these people talk about the past, and I used to be guilty of it, you know, like that's the era that I grew up in. So it's easy to, I guess, choose your era over everybody else's era. But, you know, but when I think about it, you know what I mean? Like there was a lot of Bruce Bowen, you know, that I watched growing up. You know, there was some like Stacey Augmon, who like was a pretty decent offensive player, but he was known for his defense. You know, there was some stuff like that going on. There was Michael Jordan being guarded by Jeff Hornacek. So where I think I made that transition out of old guyhood was, you know, when I watched Kobe, because Kobe was one of my favorite players, but on a night-to-night basis, you know, he had to go up against T-Mac. You know, he had to go against Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. You know what I mean? But those were dudes that were at his size with his athletic ability, XYZ. Whereas when I go back to Michael Jordan, Joe Dumars was a good defender, but Jordan still had him about 3 inches and, you know, some pounds and all that. Jeff Hornacek, you know, Craig Elo, you know, Danny Ainge. Don't make me go on, and I'm not picking on them because they're white boys. But the point being, they weren't at his athletic ability, you know, and they weren't his height, they weren't his body build or whatever the case may be. So he was posting these dudes up, going to work
above everybody already. So he was already head and shoulders above everybody as is. So people making it seem like the defense was way tougher. I think, like I said, I think scoring at the rim was tougher simply because the bodies, like you had to get through bodies. And maybe there's some fouls, maybe they were like the hard fouls. And we see plenty of highlights of hard fouls. We've seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar punch people in the face. We've seen Larry Bird and Bill Russell. But we see these collective highlights. But if you really look at like the 90s NBA basketball, the guys who were the unicorns of that era just would rise above that defense. Clyde Drexler, Pippen, because Pippen was a 6'8", 6'9", long wing defender. So he was the same height as Anthony Mason, but his athleticism was, off the charts in comparison. So you couldn't put Anthony Mason on him on the wings because he couldn't stay in front of him. But you can keep Anthony Mason on the block and have him bang with, Bill Winnington or Luke Longley in those series against Chicago, because that's what he provided you. But he gave you nothing on the offensive end. So he's just there. He's just a body. So it looked like it's more difficult to score because there's nowhere to move the ball. If Greg Anthony has the ball and he kicks it to John Starks and they get it to Ewing, that's it. Anthony Mason and Charles Oakley are not involved in the scoring. So if they get the ball, it's literally just to set a screen. Whereas now, Anthony Edwards gets it to Karl-Anthony Towns, and Karl-Anthony Towns moves it around to Tinsley, and then or some guy off the bench that's 6'11", all he does is shoot. And then you got Rudy Gobert down there getting rebounds or getting lob passes. Like, the way you move the ball is easier because instead of working with 60% of your guys on the floor, all 100% of your guys on the floor can put your team in a position, or at least that's what every team is looking for. Whereas back in the 80s,
right there.
Back in the 80s and 90s, all I really wanted, I needed 2 scorers and I needed 3 defenders. If I had a third to score, like when the Chicago got Tony Kukoc, it was like, whoa, they got a third guy. It was unheard of to have a third guy that could score the way that he scored. Whereas every other team had point guard, shooting guard, small forward, maybe, but he played closer to the rim. To the rim.
Right.
Or the power forward, i.e. Karl Malone, did all the scoring and Byron Russell just played defense.
Yeah, that came later, like your Glenn Rice's, that came a little bit later, your Steve Smiths, but yeah, we were right here.
Yeah, like guys like Glenn.
Yeah, we were right here because I was going to bring up John Starks. Like, this man came from the supermarket and, was slapping Jordan around a little bit. You know what I mean? So like, when I look at this era compared to that one, I saw a post today in our sports group, and it made me think because they were arguing about whether Derrick Rose should have been MVP or not. And, I was thinking about, like, I don't know how to word this, so I'm gonna just roll with it. But I'm like, Derrick Rose to what we're seeing from Ja Morant right now. And I ain't talking about who's the better player. I'm not talking about who shoots better or any of that. I'm just talking about the athleticism and, like, the overall, like, because, like, Ja is right now averaging 5 more points than Rose averaged in that MVP season. So, the pace is a little bit faster, but, it is what it is. But when I look at that, and then you turn around, you look at Anthony Edwards, like he's, when I look at Dwayne Wade, I always thought of him as a dude that sort of played similar to Jordan because Kobe shot a lot more threes than both of them. So I've always thought of D Wade as a good Jordan comparison, especially like with his blocks and all that kind of stuff like that. But when I look at D Wade today, like if I were to put D Wade in the league today, you know what I mean? Like, how would he match up with Anthony Edwards? I would love to see it. Because Anthony Edwards is
or DeRozan with the mid-range jumper, or like a Devin Booker with the mid-range, and I think that works. But I think the thing that drives a needle is guy's ability, like a guy who has the ability to take you off the dribble, get to the hoop and score, create his own shot off the dribble, his own 3-point shot or jumper off the dribble, or just has the ability just to take over the game, make your defense mold to what he's doing. There's a few players in the league that do that. Kyrie's one, Steph is one, Dame is one. Ja Morant, he has that ability, but I think you can just play him straight up and live and die with the results. I think Dame is going to get other teams. He still has 6 assists with 71 points. 6 rebounds, 6 assists with 71 points. He still was moving the ball. A lot of those plays, they just were giving the ball back to him. He'd move the ball, move it around, and then Houston would just kind of get lulled to sleep, and he'd run back out, grab it, shoot the three. Steph puts guys in that same position where he can handle the ball off the drive or just come up, give it to Draymond, and just run baseline to baseline, and other people setting screens for him, because I think that's the way he impacts the game. I'm not sure if Ja plays that way. I think he plays more with the ball in his hand, more like an athletic Luka kind of situation where like you have to have the ball in his hand. That's why he makes spectacular plays. But what Dame was doing with the ball Sunday night was like, it looked effortless. And then he had the dunk, and he said why he had the dunk. He was like, oh, because I came through twice and the guy blocked my layups. So he was like, listen, I got to get to the rim and turn this one over. So just that kind of mindset of like, all right, I'm going to attack the rim, even though I can pull up from the logo. That's impressive. That's impressive to do, considering that he is the scoring threat on that team. Like the other guy, Simmons, was injured. So it's like, there's no, who you going to give the, and Nurkic was out. So it's like, who you giving the ball up to if Dame doesn't have it? So you know he's a primary scorer. He's a point guard, the ball handler. He's only 6'2", and he still dropped 71 points. I'm glad the other guy on the show with Rob Parker set him straight. He was like, listen, would you rather watch an NFL game where the score was 7-6 or 35-27?
Don't start this. We don't got enough time for that conversation. We don't got enough time for that.
That's what he was like, would you rather watch a baseball game that was 1-0? He was like, I get it. Sometimes a good 1-0 game is what you need, but you don't want that every single night. You wouldn't want to watch 162 games of 1-0 scores. He was like, everyone's want an 8-6 with a couple of 3-1 home runs. You want
I don't want a lot of these NBA games every night, you know. But before we switch topics,
points, you got to be like, oh, this is impressive.
But before we switch topics, I didn't forget. I want you to let everybody know where Dame Lillard is going to be playing next year.
Dame Lillard is going to be playing for the Utah Jazz next season. I don't have any inside information. I just know that Portland traded Josh Hart during the warm-ups. Knicks haven't lost since he's gotten there. They traded C.J. McCollum to New Orleans. I don't know what they got in return. I think they got Josh Hart in return for that. Traded him away. I think they're preying on his loyalty, and his agent gonna be like, listen, man, you went back to Utah for the All-Star game. You wore the Weaver State jersey. You're comfortable there. People love you there. They have plenty of cap space. They have plenty of picks. Like, we can make Portland make a move to get you there and make a run from there. Because, like I said, all everything he can do from there. Like, it's only 40-minute flights out of Salt Lake City, and they go all like 40 to 40. I think like the flight to Portland is probably 65 minutes.
All right, so I'm gonna tell you why I agree and disagree with you. Well, I don't think he's going to Utah. I don't think it would be next year. You know, I think we're probably 2 years out from that. But if it were to happen, but so where I agree with you is, you know, I saw a tweet from 2017 where he mentioned that Utah and the Lakers would be the two non-Blazer teams that he would like to play for. He obviously has the affinity for Weber State, you know what I mean? He went there, so, you know, there's always that card and the whole 3-point contest, you know, shooting in his jersey and all that. So I'm intrigued. You know, but so I don't know how common this is in the NBA, because I know NFL teams try not to do this, but trading a dude within your division just don't sound like the right thing to do. He's got 2 years left on his contract, though, which pay him $48 and $45 million. So I imagine that by the time that is done, if he does end up leaving Portland, I would think that the conversation with Portland would be, help me get to a contender. Like, I was loyal to you, help me get to a contender. So I could see like a Miami. I could see the media running with, if the Lakers don't get Kyrie, I could see the media running with that and trying to put the Lakers back together again, like Humpty Dumpty. But
we know they have zero leverage to get.
But the other thing is, Danny Ainge got all them picks over there. So, you know, like, you generally don't want to trade somebody within a division to a rival and all that kind of stuff like that. But Utah's got all the picks. So, you know, Portland and you know, so I mean, it's a possibility, I guess. I don't know about next year, but I'm not ruling it out. So
October 23.
rap. So, I like to do my little polls and I try to talk to people. I like to sound like a politician where I was talking to the real people on the streets. So I was talking to some real people. It was more so on the phone than it was on the streets. But I had talked to about 4 people. And I was like, yo, you seen this game end on the pitch count? And the dude, all 4 of them said, what? You going to minor league games? I said, no, man, spring training's going on. And they said, when did spring training start? What's up with baseball, man?
I'm right there with you. I saw it. I saw a clip. It was on Twitter. Like I was scrolling through Facebook, and it was like, game ends on new pitch count or new pitch clock rule or something. And I was like,
yeah, the violation, pitch clock violation.
So I clicked on it, and I saw it was 2 professional teams. I was like, when did they start? I'm like, is this from last year? I thought it was old. I thought it was from last spring training. I'm like, this was a few days ago. So this was February 25th. I'm like, I know it. Like, I just went to Vegas. I know it's warm out there, but I didn't think it was like baseball spring training warm. I thought it was more the month of March, and then they fired up the season April 1st. But baseball, they're trying to please and appease someone. I'm not sure who complained about the length of the game, because when Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were hitting 60-plus home runs, the game was just as long. But they were hitting home runs. When Brady Anderson had the sideburns, the Elvis chops, the games were just as long. When Fred McGriff was playing for the Braves or Albert Bell was playing for the Chicago White Sox, the games were just as long. When Bo Jackson was breaking. So what I'm saying is that if you had real star power, no one would care how long the games were. If you had it to where, like, I know they got rid of the shift. If guys could just hit the ball, hit the ball. And if managers played small ball, get a guy to first, either try to bunt him over to second, maybe you steal second. But I know the analytics, I'm not a big fan of. I like it for information purposes, but I don't like it for decision-making purposes. And I think it's taken over the decision-making, because we had a conversation last about the Buffalo Ravens game, whether they should have kicked the field goal or ran the ball, whatever the case may be, in the fourth quarter. And I was like, so I think the analytics they're starting to lend themselves to decision-making versus knowledge-based. Like, hey, this is the type of pitch this pitcher likes to throw in a situation. That's information. But if I said to you, he likes to throw sliders in this situation per the analytics, don't swing the bat. Like, that doesn't make any sense, because if that slider hangs, but I've already told you don't swing the bat, now you got a perfectly 88-mile-an-hour slider coming right down the middle that you could smoke. But because you listen to analytics and you did what the analytics told you to do, then you're going to miss out. And I think that's what baseball has a problem. It's like, when I played baseball as a kid, it was a simple thing. If I walked, I'm looking to steal second. I'm looking to get in scoring position. Like, that was the whole name of the game. My coach would say, don't swing at the first pitch. Make the pitchers throw you a strike. That was his thing. He's like, yo, just don't swing at the first pitch. Make them throw you a strike. Unless it's meat. Unless it's coming right down the middle, you can crush it. Let it go. He's like, it's going to get the pitcher to throw more pitches. If he gets 1 ball, 2 balls, maybe he gets frustrated, gets a pass ball. The kid that's on first gets the second. It's a whole strategy. When I was 9 years old. So I get the first, and I'm just waiting, because I know the first pitch, my teammate's not going to swing. Waiting on it, gets past, boom, I'm going to second. And then the coach's like, all right, put the bunt down. We practice the bunting down the first baseline with a phone second, gets me to third. Maybe you beat it out the first. You can still do this in professional baseball, but they don't. They got guys up there that either try to hit singles, home runs, or they strike out. Like, when there's the shift is unfair to left-handed batters. Learn to go opposite way. Just move your feet, so when you come through the box with the bat, you're a little later and the ball goes to left field. But nope, They want to stand there and they just hit ground balls into this shift. It's like there's no one on this side of the field. You can't hit the ball that way. So I think their inability to just be exciting, just to be exciting is the problem. So they come up with all this other stuff that think, what's the difference between 3 hours and 3 hours and 22 minutes of a baseball game? Because it's only saving 22 minutes on average. They say saving 22 minutes. So what am I getting? Like, what am I getting for the implementation of this rule? Like, what is the advantage other than potential controversy when innings going to end because the guy his head is down because he's going through his routine and the clock hits 7 seconds. Like, oh, head was down. He's not ready to go. He's out. Like, come on. That just sounds ridiculous. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's weird because I went to 2 major league games last year, doing some 2-bit report and all that. And, so the first game I went to was a night game. It was the Rockies and the Nationals. And it ended about 3 hours, 11 minutes. The score was 9-7. So it only went long because of the runs, which is supposed to be exciting. It wasn't a lot of home runs, but they scored. The second game I went to was the Rockies and the Giants, which was a little bit more of a defensive struggle, if you will. That was about 3 hours and 5 minutes. So, I mean, the difference between 11 to 14 runs was 5 minutes. So like each game is going to have its own personality in baseball. So just for a little bit of clarity of the original point that you brought up. So the Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves were playing. They finished in a 6-6 tie because the Braves shortstop Cal Conley failed to be in the box and ready to hit with 8 seconds left on the clock. So now, obviously, this is spring training. It's going to end in a tie. It's not a big deal. And, as you mentioned earlier when we were talking earlier, I can see this now. It's going to be, maybe right after the All-Star break, we're going to get into the pennant race and everything. And somebody's going to have a batting violation that causes a game to go into extra innings or, like maybe somebody gets called for a strike and like the game ends. They lose by 1 run or whatever the case may be just because the clock ran out. And then it's going to be mass hysteria, even though it's probably going to happen 1 to 3 times.
Record. Imagine going for the home run record. People paid $2,700 for these tickets to see this home run record. And his last at bat, he's trying to take in the moment to say, hey, I'm trying to get this home run. And he doesn't get his head up in time. And they call him out.
Yeah.
And the season ends. He doesn't break the record. Like, I mean, I know that's extreme, but imagine just in the third inning, bases loaded in the third inning, you got a pitcher that's up there tired, and the batter doesn't pick his head up, where he gets an opportunity to maybe score a run, and the inning ends. It's like that's the kind of thing. Is like, you're not giving the fans a better product. You're not. You're worse. You're giving me more problems than solutions by implementing something that I didn't complain about. If you go to a baseball, it's great. Just serve food after the 7th inning. That's my only problem. They stopped serving concessions at baseball games in the 7th inning. That's the problem.
Give me my funnel cake.
Give me the funnel cakes. Give me the Rocky dogs. Like, okay, you stop serving beer because the game could end. I get that. But I'm like, serve food. Like, they stopped serving everything in the 7th inning. So if the game goes to 14 innings, I got nothing. I can't get so that's the problem. Like, that's the issue.
So for those of you not in the know, they ran these clocks in the minor leagues last year. As Raph mentioned, it cut down the games by about 22 minutes or so. And according to my guy, he's my guy. I don't know how he became my guy, but my guy, Tom Verducci over at Sports Illustrated, broke it down to the pitch clock being 15 seconds when the bases are empty and 20 with runners on base. But to switch gears for a second, because, I'm always talking about, I don't know Mike Trout and what's wrong with baseball and this and this. So, Raph, I want to ask you something that you talked about the other day, and I'm sorry that I throw you on the spot like this, but it just pops into my head. But talk to me. You said you didn't like the playoff format.
I don't like the playoff format. I don't like you get all the way to the end of the season and then there's a 1-game playoff. Start the season a little earlier so you can have the World Series end before Halloween. I mean, you already got spring training starting early, And if you're going to give me that early first round, give me best of 3. You can't give me a playoff format where it's one. Like you're already playing multiple games throughout the end of September to stay in contention, to stay in position where you are, and then you get to the playoffs, and then you get one more sudden death game. Like you could have been pitching your pitchers on short rest. Instead of 5 days, you got 3 days, so you can get into the playoffs. And now you got to run it with your third or fourth pitcher because you use your first 3 pitchers to make sure you got that wild card spot or to make sure you won your division. So it's like, so now you essentially exhaust yourself in this sprint, and you get to the finish line. They're like, all right, man, 100 more meters. You're like, what? And now you got to ramp back up, and then you only get one shot at it. It's such a disservice to the teams. Like, make it a best of 3, best of 5, and then the 2 best, then best of 7. Like, make it worthwhile for the fans. It's like, I don't know if you talk to a fan, they might say, "Oh, I like the format of sudden death." No, like, give me 3 games, give me best of 3, give me more baseball.
So for me, I like it just from a drama standpoint. But when I thought about it after you brought it up, because I hadn't really thought about it before, but when you brought it up, I was kind of like, it would really suck if I won. We played this team 19 times, and I won 13 of the 19 matchups, and I still got to play you one time. Like, imagine the NFL, having a situation where the Vikings sweep the Packers, but they both finish 9-8, and they got to play a one game to see who's going to get the playoff berth. People would go nuts. We got tiebreakers for a reason, you know. So from that standpoint, I don't like it. How do you feel about the extra wild card teams that they added?
I think with baseball, unlike other sports, their stars don't get killed for not making the playoffs. And I think baseball they're trying to expand into that realm where they're just more popular. And I think the playoffs bring in the drama, because we see it with the NBA. There's not a lot of drama during the season unless it's a team that you expected to be better isn't doing well. So you could talk about that all the time. Golden State, the Lakers, will the Knicks be good? Certain players win championships. So you can create real narratives throughout the entire regular season with basketball, other than baseball, because baseball, the MVP is normally pretty simple. It's clean cut, the guy with the most home runs and RBIs, and if his batting average is, or Shohei Ohtani, who pitched and hit 40 home runs, okay, that guy's going to be MVP, and they don't have to make the playoffs. So, like, the baseball wasn't really, like, the playoffs weren't really, like, the thing that you use to, like, grade these pseudo grades for players. So they just was the World Series. So if you made it to the World Series, then people will remember if you won the World Series. No one really talks about Barry Bonds never won a World Series the way we talk about, certain quarterbacks not winning a championship. Dan Marino will make it to the Super Bowl once. So baseball has that pass. But I think the wild card, the playoffs, I think it just worked better if you gave it a real television entertainment shot, coupled with the sudden death aspect that you like out of it. Because even in the best of 3, after one game, you get your sudden death moment. You get your one hiccup, and then maybe you win back-to-back games. But if you lose 2 in a row, it's a wrap. But give me a shot to get ramped up, play this game, win it out. But you can't do it with the one game. So I think baseball, they get the whole summer. I don't know if they don't. For instance, if I'm a baseball team, first thing I'm doing, instead of making these format changes and these clock changes, I'm making like real logistical in the stadium changes. First of all, I'm not selling any tickets in those upper levels. I'm filling up the lower levels from the back row all the way up to the wall. I don't need anybody up there. I need if there's only 12,000 people in the stadium, I need all of y'all down here so you can get a chance to catch the foul ball so it looks good. Because I watched the game. I was watching the Pirates game. It's like a Wednesday. Granted, it's tough. Wednesday and, May to sell out a stadium. People are working. Kids are in school. Summer camps in the summertime. But if you made the tickets reasonably priced to where your whole objective is to sell out that bottom section, not just for the playoff runs, because when Philly was going to the World Series, then the stadium was packed all the time. But bring everybody down, get everybody in the stadium, get it in the schools where you just give out 500 tickets to local schools, so you can just bring kids to, so you can get fans. Because my son started playing hockey because I took them to my friend's old man hockey league on a Sunday night. And they were like, this is kind of interesting. I'm like, you guys want to play? And I signed them up. My son was a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old. I signed them up because we were in the building. It was like, this looks interesting. Let's check it out. So if you do more of that and you bring more fans in, you're gonna sell more concessions. You're gonna sell hats, jerseys, hot dogs, beers, whatever you want to sell. You're gonna make your money, and we didn't know spring training started. We have a sports podcast where we look for ideas all the time.
Hey, I knew.
I had no idea it had started. I know it starts around this time. I had no idea it was already starting to implement these new rules, and that could be on me for not looking out for the information, but I know exactly when the NBA All-Star game was. I know when the Pro Bowl, they're going to play flag football. I knew who was hosting. I know what Tom Brady's going to get next year, this contract to talk about football. I know what Tony Romo gets, because they just the NFL funnels that information out. Baseball does I don't even want to call it a bad job. I just think they don't look to present that information as much as they should.
Yeah, even my wife, who don't even watch wrestling with me, know that The Miz hosting WrestleMania. Like, it just don't even make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it just don't even make sense.
We knew,
but
at the Super Bowl halftime show months ago.
Right, and like baseball, like and it's so crazy because baseball is such a awesome sport, such a beautiful sport. It's the best time of the year weather-wise. So like
best time of the year.
Yeah.
They have the prime time of the year to have your team play. Can you imagine football played throughout the summer? How many kids not going to school? Like, football on a Sunday in July, can you imagine? It'd be packed. Perfect weather. Almost every stadium in America has perfect weather in July. It gets a little hot in August. Depends where you are. Baseball, they have it, and I'm not sure exactly. What would you do?
Yeah, but like
2 suggestions. What would you do to improve the baseball, like, I don't know, viewership?
I just want to know when baseball gonna get Mike Trout and Ohtani into the playoffs. That's what I want to know, because I keep hearing from everybody, and I believe it to be true, that Mike Trout is probably a top 10 player of all time. So like, I like to see him in the playoff. Like, it don't hurt me or anything, because I'm that guy that says, if you can't get to the playoff, then you just can't get to the playoff. But I would love to see Mike Trout in the playoffs. We saw Bryce Harper get to the World Series this year, and everything, so I mean, why not? And speaking of the World Series, we will be making World Series predictions soon, and I've been looking at these odds. The Astros are the favorites to repeat. And I told you, no one has repeated since 1999. So, there's something to look forward to. And then you got the Dodgers, Yankees, Braves, and Mets bringing up the top 5 as far as the odds to win the World Series. But while we're here, we're concluding another show. This time we're going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to go get something off my chest, So we're going to start this off, and Raph's going to close us out, and then, we're going to go from there, and we'll see you Friday. But here we go. So this is what I got on my mind. So the other day, I told you how joyful it was that March Madness is coming. It's in the air. March starts tomorrow, February. Get out of here. We are ready. So, being the college basketball enthusiast that I am, I found myself watching some Atlantic Sun conference tournament yesterday. And two of the schools that were playing were Queens University down in Charlotte, who is making this is their first year in the Atlantic Sun. And then the other game featured Bellarmine. I want to say Bellarmine, but I put pronounce into Google and it told me Bellarmine down in Louisville, Kentucky. So Bellarmine got hot last year, finished the season 20-13, and went through the Atlantic Sun tournament in their second year of being in the conference, won the tournament. So jump for joy, Cinderella. We got a Cinderella going to March. Not so fast, because Bellarmine has to wait 4 years as they go through their transition. So sadly, they lost tonight to Liberty University, and Queens lost to Kennesaw State. So the dream isn't going to continue to go forward. But if you win your conference, you should make the tournament. And are the new kid on the block and you come through and whoop everybody's ass, you should get to represent your conference in March, So that upsets me. And of course, college football being my favorite sport, we ran into this situation last year with the James Madison Dukes Virginia stand up. They came into the Sun Belt Conference. They didn't win the conference, but they finished. They were bowl eligible by victories, and they didn't get to play a bowl because they have to wait another year. They're not even eligible until 2024 unless they submit a waiver. That is BS. Like, out of all these things that the NCAA regulate or try to regulate, this is the thing that they try to lay their hat down on. Let Bellarmine in the tournament if they're eligible. Let Queens in the tournament if they're eligible. Merrimack should have got in the tournament a couple of years ago. I forgot where they're located, but I'm just on one right now. And James Madison should have made a bowl game last year. So NCAA, get your head out your ass because you're being phased out anyway. Do the right thing and let these kids play for championships. That's what I wanted to get off my chest.
Yo, he's real passionate about his college basketball. He mentions Kentucky every single time. Somehow, even though we're not talking basketball, he'll mention.
Yes, Vanderbilt's going down tomorrow. I don't care if Jerry Stackhouse is going to beat me up for saying that.
You heard it here first. We make predictions. Some of them come true. Might get off my chest is a little somber, but I also wanted to bring light to this. When given an opportunity to reach out to somebody, take that opportunity. I'm here in Jersey, and over the last few months, I believe we've had 6 or 7 people commit suicide here at the base. I'm of various ages. I had an individual I used to be in the unit with, retired, committed suicide this week. And I was talking to someone because I don't know if people notice this when the police officer is killed in line of duty or passed away, and you see a police officer and they have their badge and they have a black band across it. That's to show respect for a police officer that passed away. Well, my unit, sadly, my unit I retired from, we have maintenance badges that you wear over your name tape or the U.S. Air Force name tape. And it's just a maintenance badge. It's an eagle holding like a wrench and a missile. And then people have that profile picture on Facebook and it has the black band across it because it happens so much that when it does happen, people change their Facebook pages. A lot of people are sad about it and they reach out. And I reached out to a former supervisor of mine to find out, like, what he knew. And he told me that, it was sad. We talked about it, but he said something. He's like, if you read through his Facebook posts, they were like cries for help. Like if you read through his Facebook, it was leading up to, this tragic moment where he took his own life. Reach out to your people. Don't just use social media for drama. Like I sat and I watched someone on my page. They're just going back and forth. They're just posting drama and just beefing with each other and tag each other in the beef. It's like, listen, you can use that platform for something way better than that. Like we're using it to have these conversations about sports. It's something I look forward to a couple times a week on top of like everything else we have going on. So when I'm talking to people like, what's going on with you? I'm like, oh, I got this going on, I got this going on. I started a podcast with a good friend of mine. He's also retired. So my conversation is different. You know, people say, oh, man, I got nothing going on. I'm just working. I'm just tired working for the man, blah, blah, blah. I don't have that conversation because I have this fellowship. I have this outlet. And Mike subsequently has the same thing. We share with people in our group. It's just a great conversation piece. We all have that going on in our lives. So I beg for you to reach out to people and see what's going on with them. This individual passed away, had a lot of hobbies. He was connected to a lot of people. And if you go to his Facebook page now, it's a bunch of people tagging him in posts and saying prayers and rest in peace. And it's like, okay, you know, we got to do that before, you know. Don't bring me flowers when I'm dead, no soup while I'm sick. You know, come see me. Come to me if you think I'm having an issue. If I'm posting I'm having an issue. Reach out to someone you haven't spoke to in a while. You know the people in your life who get stressed out easy. You know people have problems in their lives. You know who went through divorce. You know who got demoted. You know who had to move. You know who just broke up. You know who just lost a job. You know who these people are because you hear the information. Reach out to those people. It's a lot of leading edge like problems, relationship problems, money problems, legal problems, you know, career issues. A lot of those things are triggers for, you know, suicide ideations and suicidal thoughts and suicidal tendencies. If you know someone's going through those things, reach out to them, talk to them. You don't want to keep posting rest in peace on someone's page after they pass when you can say, hey man, what's up? Let's go do this while they're still alive. So that's something, like I said, I'm thankful that I have the outlet that I have. It's galvanized a lot of my family. We talk about, you know, hey, I'm up here recording. And they just know, like, hey, I'm not up here just sitting in my room by myself. They know I'm up here being productive or I'm doing my homework or something like that because I'm in my school. Because I have one thing going on that's positive, I link it to another positive thing. So my conversation with someone else is positive. So now I'm sharing a positive conversation with them. They're giving me a positive conversation back. We're not meeting each other with negativity and then leaving each other being more negative. Even though we may disagree on something, having that time to fellowship and reach out to people, it's important. People feel alone, and that's when they commit suicide. It's some crazy statistic. I think it's like 85 to 90% of people, if you reach out to them in the moment before they were going to attempt suicide, they don't go through with it. They just need somebody to say, hey, I'm here. What's up? So, like, you guys can reach out to me on Instagram through my nonprofit, the Brooklyn Winners Initiative. You can reach out to us on Sports Reports as Order. You can slide in our DMs. You can Twitter, Fear My Wrath. The email is sportsreportsasordered@gmail.com. I mean, like, if you or have somebody you don't know how to approach it. I was a suicide prevention counselor while I was on active duty for many years. So you can reach out to me. I'll talk to you personally. I'll send you my phone number. You can talk to me on Facebook Messenger. I think it's very important that people not feel alone in this world, because when you do, you feel hopeless. And when you feel hopeless, you do things that are, you know, you look for a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So reach out to anyone you can reach out to. I wish, as a matter of fact, I'm going to pull up the suicide prevention phone number so I can read it off instead of saying look for it. All right, the suicide prevention crisis, you can dial 988 or 911. So you can dial 988. It's important. It's important that you reach out to people. It's important that people don't feel alone. And if you have that opportunity to reach out to someone, do it. Like I said, you also have 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-TALK, or the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 988. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. I know it ended on a somber note, but once again, while we're above ground, breathing this oxygen, enjoying life, we got to recognize that, you know, everyone might not be enjoying it. So take an opportunity to reach out to someone, post it on your page. I'm going to share it on my Twitter after this, and I'll share the clip and everything else. But take time to reach out to people who you think need help. Definitely reach out if you feel you need help.
For sure. Thank you for that. And stay away from those people that cause stress. And I know this is like old school, cliche, dumb, whatever, but if you don't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Because I remember when we were at Hill, I don't know if you were in attendance, but there was a young lieutenant who took his life. And we had a commander's call with the wing commander who went on to give a spiel about how selfish that individual was, you know, because he left us there to mourn, which was one of the most disgusting things that I had probably ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? Because obviously, if that's the type of culture that you're putting out there, that's probably, it could have contributed to why he did what he did. So that's the other thing as well. So not only reach out, but try to find those positive people. And for the other people on the other side trying to help these individuals, just be positive in general. You know, that's being positive and smiling and laughing can just do so much. Like one laugh could save somebody's life, you know, depending on the time that it happens. So as long as we love each other and at least care, we can beat this. You know, that's simple.
Well said. Well said.
Yep. So on that note, you know, we're going to leave you on that somber note. We will see you Friday. You know, all the Twitters and all that will be in your descriptions. See you then. Another show down. Love you, America. And we out.